And now let's turn our attention to energy efficiency. If we were to look at the utility bill, the energy bill for a single-family house, and it's broken out like this. There's different components, these components right here, different components of the house use different portions, different percentages of the energy bill. Which slice of the energy pie is the biggest? Which of these is the biggest user of energy? What's the smallest user, and what's in between? All right, so feel free to use this in your housing counseling class or whatever. But there is certainly something to very quickly helping people think about, if different components of your house use different amounts of energy here, why don't you focus on the big energy users? And so let me give you a couple tips for that 45% of the utility bill. They tell you in the summertime to heat your thermostat at 78. In the wintertime, heat your heater to, set your heater to 68 degrees. And do you know that for every, let's say it's, in these days right now, or a couple months ago, it's real hot. For every, if you set it to 78, that's great. That's an efficient setting. For every degree higher, if you set it at 79 or at 80, for every degree higher that you set it, you'll save about 4% of that portion of your utility bill. It's on average what it is. So it's nice to be able to quantify it in that way. You might be able to set that thermostat a couple degrees higher if you were augmenting your air conditioner with a ceiling fan. A ceiling fan doesn't actually, if you were to hold a thermometer to it, it doesn't generally reduce the temperature all that much. It's mostly your perception of the temperature. If you're right here and you got yourself a little fan or something like that, I feel cooler, but the temperature around me actually hasn't changed. It's just the rush of wind around me. Some people can't stand to have too much of that rushing air around them, but the balance between air conditioner and fan could save you money, allowing you to increase the degree setting of your thermostat. And one final thing, we live in a very sunny part of the country, and any sunlight that we can keep out of our house will allow our air conditioner to run more cheaply and efficiently. And so what can we do to keep that sunlight out? We can have awnings outside the house. We can have blinds. We can have vegetation that's kind of mostly blocking out the majority of the sunlight on that one end of the house that gets the setting sunlight, for example. These types of things are design considerations that will make a significant difference on what is almost half of the utility bill. A couple of other words to say about these others. Water heaters can be set as high up as 140 degrees, but you can get a good warm setting if you set it down to 120 degrees. There's a savings involved there. And finally, when it comes to the refrigerator, the most significant energy user of any of the appliances, so much so that it's actually separated out to its own category, well, the one thing I'll say there is just what Mom probably also says too. You should know what you're looking for before you open that door. Have an idea so you're not just cooling off the kitchen. And then, of course, the second thing, a full refrigerator works more efficiently than a not full refrigerator. So even if you have to fill a couple of extra bags of ice in the freezer, try to keep things full in there, Florida Green Building Coalition, and they have created a checklist to help builders and local governments that are funding housing projects to help them with a fairly easy to understand way of, if you build this kind of house, we will give you a green housing designation. Now, this is not just a blank checklist. This is a checklist of that was completed. This is an example I got from the Building Coalition of a house that was an affordable house, kind of modestly sized house that was built in part with some affordable housing funding. And let's just go through very quickly, and I want to highlight a couple of things that this affordable housing developer thought was a good idea. Maybe it's the same sort of stuff you might find interesting. First of all, on the first page, let me point out that the goal of this checklist is you have to check enough features on the next couple pages to add up to 100 points. Some features offer you more than 1 point, some features only 1 point. And then can we also look at all the things that are a part of this document, all the different house components. It's really amazing. We're not just talking about windows, but also about walls and ceiling and cooling and hot water heating and heating of the house and lights and infiltration. How much of the cool air in your house leaks out. Things like that. There's a lot of components to designing a house in an energy efficient manner, in a green manner. Flip to the next page and let me just highlight a couple of things. The biggest energy user in our houses is heating and cooling, especially here in Florida. And so it's very good that one of the very first things on their checklist is dealing specifically with energy efficiency. It's dealing with properly sizing your air conditioner, okay? And making sure that all the ductwork that comes off from the air conditioner are properly sealed. So a couple words about that. You should properly seal, now this is kind of funny, I think. You should not seal ducts with duct tape. Which seems a little counterintuitive. You know, they called it that. I don't know, probably some advertising genius called it that. But you know, duct tape is not a very efficient way of sealing ducts. Instead, they want you to use this real sticky, nasty mastic, is what it's called, to seal up those, you know, it's sticky when it first goes on and then it dries, but boy, it will not allow for any leaks. You know, this you might think is just like, well, duh, of course all of the ducts should be airtight. I thought that's why we were hiring an air conditioning contractor. Well, you know, sometimes an air conditioning contractor will not use mastic, will not fully seal up those ducts. Sometimes there can actually be just a mistake and oversight. A couple different times I've heard of energy inspectors going out to a house, looking in the attic, and the ducts are not connected. So that's the most comfortable attic you've ever been in, you know? It's just like cooling off the attic and out the house. So I mean, mistakes can be made, and that has to be properly inspected. And also you have to make sure that you have proper sizing of your air conditioner. If you have an air conditioner that's too big for your house, it's too powerful for your house, then your air conditioner will cool off the house before it properly removes all the moisture in the house, right? Let's remember that an air conditioner is not just for cooling down, but also to remove moisture, which can really, you know, over time destroy the materials of a house. If you have a too small an air conditioner in your house, then it'll work too hard and never really fully remove all the moisture, never fully cool down the house properly. And so, whereas it used to be that an air conditioning contractor would just do a little rule of thumb, you know, kind of look at that house, that looks like about a 3-ton air conditioner. These days, no. Don't do it, don't eyeball it, do the manual J calculation, as they call it. Actually calculate the square footage, the size and the shape of the house, and you then give me a conclusion, what's the proper size for this air conditioner? That's a fair enough thing to ask for. I'm not going to go through each one of these things, but just some of the interesting ones. Like, I think it's very interesting, they've decided to get 1 point for a maximum of 100-watt fixtures in the bathroom. Do you know that it is not uncommon that the lighting in bathrooms is too bright? Incandescent bulbs heat up a bathroom and can just heat up the whole house. So this is one thing that I guess is a tangible enough thing to avoid. This person's getting a little credit for avoiding having too much lighting in a bathroom. Isn't it interesting that 14 points of what it takes to make this a greenhouse comes from landscaping? 16 points, a full 16 points of the credit that makes this a greenhouse comes from the fact that this is a small house, okay? Now I would imagine, now of course small in comparison to what? This checklist was created for any house, any residential house that gets built in Florida. And you know, some of them can get pretty darn big. On average, however, our houses are usually kind of modestly sized, and a smaller house, just by its nature, makes less demands on energy and water and all that sort of stuff. So you get a credit for that. And so this is an example for you to use. You could feel free to take any number of these individual items and list them in a new construction strategy.